What is going on, guys? Welcome in to another edition of Huskers Live with myself and Brian. I always forget to bring our dang names up. There's our names in case you forgot them from the last episode. Brian, how's it going today, man?
I'm good. Hectic day at work. I was almost late to the show. So,
but
how are you doing?
You're here. That's all that matters. And we had an eventful Monday, to put it lightly. A couple of commitments coming after the CJ Bronaugh decommitment that had us panicking or people panicking. But we did know that Danny Odem would be here and that the potential was there, that Nebraska can land him, and ultimately they did. And we're going to break those down a little bit in further detail, along with some other recruiting updates. But first, just real quick, did you see Nebraska get snubbed in the top 25 most difficult places to play in NCAA 26?
I almost quote tweeted that and said it's the annual EA Sports NCAA rage bait time, because we got snubbed. Granted, we haven't been very good at home, but there was teams in there that definitely didn't deserve it.
Top 25 though, like I'm not just tough places to play. We're not talking about like record aside. Like Mississippi
it's definitely one of the toughest. State, it's loud as hell.
Mississippi State was 25th, and all they got is cowbells,
and that's pretty annoying.
That's really annoying, and they don't win.
They had, I can't remember who was on there. I think Wisconsin was on there. I don't look at Wisconsin as a tough place to play.
Hold on,
unless it's a night game.
Hold on, let me pull it up here, because there's some. I mean, of course, you got Tiger Stadium, LSU. I mean, I don't know, like it's a tough place to play. I get it. But they're always, I feel like
they're number one.
They always got them number one. Yeah. Then they got Penn State, Ohio Stadium, Sanford Stadium, Bryant. Really, Bama Stadium is not that loud.
Especially for like 95,000 is what their capacity is.
For most of their games that aren't huge games.
Michigan State's 24th. That one does not belong on there.
Yeah, you got Clemson, Florida, Oklahoma, Oregon, Michigan, Kyle Field. You got Neyland. Texas, Doak, you got Wisconsin, South Carolina, Auburn, Washington, Iowa, like Utah, Notre Dame. Oh my gosh.
NC State?
NC State. Yeah, I almost said New Mexico. I almost said New Mexico State. I'm like, it's not New Mexico State. Oklahoma State, Michigan State, Mississippi State.
Basically, like 21 down all sucks. Like Notre Dame is notorious for getting absolutely overrun by the away team's fans. Remember when Georgia was there a couple years ago?
Yes,
well, it was probably more a couple years ago, but it was like all Georgia.
Yeah, this is an atrocious. Like whoever came up, whoever's in charge of EA, like we've known that they've been, but honestly, yeah, you're probably right. It probably is some rage baiting going on in there. And then the top two rated players, I know Marquez Watson Trent had an 88, and then Dane Key had an 88 as well for Nebraska.
Nice.
So
I'm curious what they have DJ Lagaway, because he's got so much hype for being very pedestrian last year. Let's see if we
can find that real quick. This is our like usual, like one time a year to talk about the game that I'm never even going to be able to play because it doesn't come out on PC. Reportedly 90 overall.
DJ Lagaway? Well, then Dylan must be like an 88 to a 92.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. I didn't
last year,
but I don't know what they got him at. I saw a list of Nebraska players, but I didn't pull it up. Let's see here. Go Big Red, howdy y'all. What's going on, man? Appreciate you hopping in here. Hit that like button when y'all start watching. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Joseph hopping in here. What's going on, Joseph? We had some Husker wrestling potential news yesterday. We can dive into that. Who's next to commit? Well, we'll dive into that as well. Next big name to commit, I hope, is a wrestler. Bo knows. Or it's only allowed to reach here like we did during Colorado. I don't know if you were there for like the first like 3 home games or 2 home games before that, but everybody said those games were loud as well. Bone Lib. And I'm pretty sure the stadium was loud throughout the season. From what I've heard, it's been loud. It was louder last year than it was the previous season. And
yeah, it's usually pretty consistent throughout most games, I think. Until it gets to that blowout point where you're up 30 or down 30, then it kind of falls apart. But
Yeah.
It's usually pretty consistently loud.
To say it's not really loud there in Play Colorado. It was like the loudest it had been there in a long time. We Play Colorado. Two completely different things. But let's go ahead and dive into the big commitments of the weekend. Let's go ahead and start with Danny Odum. And I broke down a little bit more of his film, but I'll kind of let you take away your overarching thoughts on Danny Odum.
Well, it's like you said at the top too. When CJ decommitted, it was like just, some people were freaking out. This is why you don't freak out. As long as you know the lay of the land of recruiting, as long as you are up to date, which if you're watching this channel, you are, you knew that Danny was a very realistic possibility. You knew the goal was get to this big final recruiting weekend. And someone, I can't remember who it was on Twitter, sent me like a statistical thing about commits and the final visit, how they correspond. And basically, it just indicated that if you get that final visit, you have a substantially higher chance to get the commit from said player. And that's why I kept saying, like, just get to this weekend and let everything else just fall into place. And that's exactly what happened. There was definitely like movement, I would say. Like early in the morning, I was very confident. Afternoon, I was pretty confident. And then around 2 or 3, you get some buzzing about Ohio State kind of just dropping a bag, or at least trying to drop a bag and kind of convince him, because Ohio State missed out on, I think, their top 3 or 4 cornerback recruits. And at this point, it kind of just felt like a potential situation, and where it was like, you're the team that identifies this guy first, or one of the first. The big time, defending champs come in with a late offer, with a late visit, and because of who they are, their reputation, they're able to convince or swing this person who was likely headed elsewhere to go to their school. It felt very much like that. And then, of course, Nebraska obviously got the commitment, but it is such a big commitment. He's a guy that can probably come in. He won't start day one just because I think Nebraska has really good corner depth. But he's got a guy that can compete for playing time, very good in man coverage, very lanky at 6'2", maybe 6'3", really good size, 180 or so pounds. And again, he's playing down in Florida, which has some of the best skill talent in all of America, especially corner, especially wide receiver. So this is a huge commitment. The question now is, can you hold on to Danny?
Yeah, and just to kind of give you an idea, pull up some film here, and I'll just let it play through real quick. I'm going to come out with a more detailed, of course, film review, just some quick little notes here as it plays through quickly. But we'll watch just kind of a couple of high-level overview things here. So when this receiver comes off the release, a little split release right here, just a couple things that you're kind of looking for, because one of the things that he does excel at is man coverage. But he's going to put a little double move on him here. So you see him kind of be handsy right here. Then that first little few yards of it, you see the receiver kind of give a push, break that route off, faking like he's going to come to the inside. Now, one of the biggest things that I do want to point out here is there's no panic, though. When he sees that breaking off and then the potential double move, you see him right here, and he almost gets him to cheat a little bit on that inside. You see Danny's eyes are to the quarterback. You see that receiver get a little bit of a separation with that hand, but he's going to wrist lock right there, that little wrist lock technique. I've talked about it before. Wrist lock right there, not be too handsy to where he can just kind of almost boomerang into it and kind of recover a little bit on that. Stays with a hand on him. Now you see, as soon as he realizes how far away from he is, and in stride for stride with him, takes that hand off of him and gets him positioned to track the ball. Tracks it, throw was underthrown, gets himself in a position to get his hands up high point. It might have had a chance at an interception, honestly, on that one with the underthrow, but he would have been in a position to kind of come down with that anyways. Here you have receiver coming out with like kind of a it's what looks to be a run heavy team that is probably just kind of faking the run here. It looks like almost like a maybe Georgia Tech's triple option style look here, but you have the receiver coming out showing block, and again doesn't bite on that, right? Keeps his eyes on the receiver, sees what the receiver's going to do, and notices that he's going to run out for a route here. And just, it's pretty easy for him speed-wise to keep step for step with this guy. Kind of smothers him right there, locks that arm a little bit just subtly so it doesn't draw. He locks it to where it looks like they're just jostling for position, doesn't really pull on it to draw a penalty or anything. So good about being physical without drawing a penalty. And again, you see the timing here. The receiver's just kind of looking it in as opposed to going up and getting it. He's kind of going up and getting his hands in there, knocking the ball away from him. So You get a couple of things here. Here's just like a pretty self-explanatory. You see him read and react. This pass out of the backfield goes for the strip. Another one right here. You're going to see him get across the field and see his ranginess, try to, his speed to get across the field, be able to track this play down. So again, strips that one out as well. And then we got a play here. You see him read and react to the run. You see this receiver initially get his punch out on him, gets that outside hand, leaves his outside hand free, so that way he can't lock onto that arm for inside positioning. Oh, crap. Well, anyways, you kind of get the gist of it. Let me pull this back up. But you see him kind of break free of that as soon as he sees that guy's coming to the inside. Gives up outside contain, but is able to trust himself to make the play. So just, pretty nothing too crazy on his film. It's just sound defensive back play. Here's another one. Man coverage, got his receiver coming in, breaking on a end breaking route after, oh my gosh, running out, breaking on the end breaking route. He just keeps his hand right there and is able to kind of, with good ball skills, jump underneath it and get a hand in there. So just a quick little high level overview of kind of some of his plays on film. But as you can see, really sticky man coverage, doesn't panic, no matter what. He's got his eyes in the right place, reading the play, reacts well, reacts quickly, good at getting his balls in, getting his hands in there to knock the ball away from the receiver. No matter where it seems his position is, he's always in a good position to play the ball. So good stuff that I see from him. And I think the biggest thing we talked about with the Bronaugh decommit was just kind of like, we needed that defensive back replacement, and kind of why I tweeted the other day, just not overreacting to every little thing, because there's always a contingency plan. There's other people to recruit, especially this far out. Like, we got time to make up for it. So just a huge get and beat him over a lot of high level teams too. So just a huge recruiting win overall there.
Yeah, it goes back to, can you hold on? And I think a lot of it's predicated on this season.
Shut up.
A lot of that is predicated on the season. You have to come out, and we say it all the time, you have to start winning. Of course, that's part of it. But one thing that Nebraska has done so well is embracing the culture. And Coach Rule, that's what I'm talking about. You saw the official visit pictures. You had the big old tractor out on the field. You had the cows in the weight room. And those are things that, as a Nebraskan, when you see, maybe you see the ESPN game day, whatever, and they show the cornfields and the combines or whatever. And you're like, man, we're so much more than that. Yes, but that is who we are at our core. And ironically, the coach from New York City is the best culture fit for Nebraska. And that's what they're doing so good, is embracing their culture and selling it as a positive as opposed to the negative, which is what a lot of schools will do with negative recruiting, is they'll say, Nebraska's ain't got much out there. It's just cornfields. Yeah, 95% of the state is, and we're okay with it. Yep,
exactly. And for those of you, I'm sure all of us have seen it right now, but just for all of our viewing pleasure, there's Matt Rule with a cow in the locker room. And then we look over here, and
today.
And it's like he was heavy on the cheeseburgers when they made the game, though. Somebody, I think it might have been the damn school posted. It's like,
yeah, they did.
Him versus the guy she told you not to worry about. It's those two pictures. So yeah, EA did Matt Rule dirty there. They not only did us dirty as fans, they did Matt Rule dirty. All right.
I imagine they're going to get a lot of flack for that, and then they'll fix it.
Yeah. Next big, let's see. Danny's partner in crime come home. He's been IG storying a bunch. I didn't know how to really say that. Sorry, I'm late. It's all right, Mike. You're here. We're on next question. Yeah, as well as in there.
Thanks, babe.
Interesting state I saw today. 92 of our 126 scholarship players are either freshmen or sophomore. Yeah, that's wild.
That's why you have a 15-person recruiting class.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. There was somebody arguing me about the state of the 2026 recruiting class, or somebody asking about it was a Minnesota fan asking about Minnesota's versus ours. And I'm like, well, Minnesota, and then a Minnesota fan saying they had the 11th ranked class. Well, they have 24 commitments. Nebraska has, I think, 9 now. I think at the time I looked, it was 8. That was pre-rule. It's either 9 or 10. I'm not sure if they had the Odem commitment on there, but it's yesterday I looked.
don't count Devin Bonwell Whitty though. He's going to be a decommit before long.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm just speaking to the number. And so like judging recruiting rankings by class, again, I think we talked about this before, but going by like actual per recruit basis is kind of what we should be gauging that off of, just because the class sizes are going to be so sporadic nowadays. Like before, like a small class, you'd still have, around about the same number per team, give or take, maybe up to 10. But I think the disparity is much more now with this kind of scholarship limit stuff, because they're going to be having so much in and out traffic, and then you got a very recruiting class based on that. There's a lot more variables to the numbers right now than they've used to have in the past. So it's, rather to be, you don't want to be way too far over the number is what I'm trying to say. So and you got teams like Minnesota that just build on recruiting, year in and year out. Those are the type of teams that are going to have to hit recruiting a lot harder. So comparing their class, that's, probably near completion, versus ours right now, and just looking at the recruiting rankings, that's where a lot of people get flipped up. But if you're looking at it on a per recruit basis, I think it's like an 87.2, 0.3, something like that. So not too terribly far off where we've been in the past, but like the momentum, again, just getting the momentum and being very early on in this class and having so many of these, key pieces kind of locked down. And not only that, I just feel like the momentum of the unity of the class. Like you got guys like Trey Taylor, and that not only helps bring people in for peer recruiting to get them, but it also helps keep classes together. Because when you have a class that's kind of interacting with each other on social media and kind of already building those relationships, like that also helps those classes kind of stay tight knit and together.
One thing too, like to kind of continue off your point about recruiting classes, is like Minnesota, yes, they'll have the rev share like we have, similar in terms of what they'll get, obviously, because we're in the same conference. But what are they willing to spend on high school recruits or portal recruits is different for Nebraska, right? Like Nebraska, and I think Sean Callahan made this point where it's like you're going to have like your handful of guys that are like your first round draft picks, right? That you're going to fork out a lot of money, and then you're going to have a bunch of development. Well, not a bunch. You're going to have a handful of developmental guys, and then you'll hit 10, 12 guys from the portal. Well, Minnesota or Iowa State or Iowa, for example, are not going to want to build through the portal, generally speaking.
Yeah.
They'll take a larger high school class. Nebraska won't. It's fine. As long as we have a good average per recruit, that's the only thing that matters. And then with recruiting too, it was just a matter of getting on a run, getting hot. You always see Nebraska or whoever, right? They always get hot at a certain point. Right now, that's where Nebraska is. We're on a run. We've got Hayden Ainsworth, Rex Waterman. We got Danny Odem. We got Jamal Rule. We're very likely getting at least 2, maybe 3 more here in the next couple of weeks. So it was just getting to that run. And now you'll see recruiting start to take off right now.
Yeah. And then you got Trey also, I forget to post it earlier, but peer recruiting trying to get an Ohio State guy on a visit. I can't remember who shared the tweet earlier. I should have bookmarked it. But he's still out there recruiting, because he's working with these guys from these bigger schools and camps and stuff like that, the Ohio States of the world and stuff like that, and still trying to pull those guys, at least out to campus to get them to see the campus, to get, that's another big part of it. You talked about like people needing to come see Nebraska. We talk about a lot. People need to come see Nebraska to see what it's like, see what the university is like, see what the campus is like. And so having somebody like him being able to pull guys out there this early on in the recruiting process still too is really good, because I think it's one thing when a coaching staff's trying to convince you to come out there, but when you got a guy in your peer group, a top recruit in that class, and we're talking about wide receiver that I saw the video of, like that makes things a lot more interesting with being able to pull some guys over. So it'll be I think the recruiting for 26 is kind of just getting its momentum, and I think we got a lot of good things on the horizon, especially so, and 27 and beyond for that matter. Let's go ahead and better value grab for a DB. Such a young team is just crazy. Yeah, Hayden's dad David's been peer recruiting with the fans on X. Very true. Number 1 receiver in 2027. That's what probably was it. You'll see the top 25 places to play. Yes, yeah, we pulled that up just a second ago. Don't understand it one bit.
I think it's just part of the stigma. with Nebraska just not being good for so long now. Your home record is terrible in the last 15 years.
But then you got schools like Mississippi State and NC State on there. And Michigan State, really,
Michigan
guys?
State, who Nebraska has routinely beat in East Lansing.
Listen, I'm not buying I'm protesting the game by not buying it because it's not out on PC. I'm never going to let them live that down. I waited all that time to get that game, and then it never came out on PC.
I don't understand the move at all. Why would you not have it on all three major platforms?
I think I do. It's because PCs are so powerful now. It's so hard to make a game and develop it to take advantage of the full power of the PC. I think it takes them a lot longer to build and develop those games. I don't know. That's what I've heard. It's just the development takes longer. It's easier to build something for the specs of the consoles. But evening, fellas. Anyone know what happened to Corn Crazed? What happened to him?
Didn't he move to Arizona?
Yes, he moved out here. I know that much, but that was as of a couple months ago. Made it sound like something bad happened. I was like, well, I hope he's all right. I was like, I hope there's no rumor I missed. But if you're talking about his channel maybe being dormant or something like that, last I had talked to him, he was moving out to Arizona. So he should be out here somewhere. But
he's enjoying the sun.
Yeah. Yeah, he's probably trying to stay safe right now and not burn alive out in the sun. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the running back room and Jamal Rule. No relation to Matt Rule, obviously, for obvious reasons. You probably could have deciphered that one, but no relation to Matt Rule. But he is a good, strong piece of this running back room, and a running back, that's kind of a different little bit of a mix than what we got with say your Emmets of the world. So if you want to go ahead and give, I got a little bit of film on Danny Odum too. His running style is pretty self-explanatory, but if you want to go ahead and give your thoughts.
Yeah, well, Jamal, it was a guy.
Danny Odum did not. Jamal Rule is what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah, with Jamal, it was very clear to me probably about 3 months ago, maybe 2 months ago, that it was Nebraska's to lose, I guess. It was very evident. We were pretty much running in first for a substantial amount of time. So the big question was always, does he stay closer to home? And you saw that with his visits. He took a lot of visits to schools on the East Coast. Every school in his final grouping was from the East Coast except Michigan State, who made kind of a late surge. But when we broke down his grade before his visit, I wanted to specify, yes, I think he's a take for Nebraska. It just depended on what happened with DeZephan Walker, and that was going into DeZephan's recruiting visit to Oklahoma. And we specified then too that Oklahoma is going to try and get him to commit, and if he does, you're going to see Nebraska go full bore to lock down Jamal Rule as quickly as they can, because it was just quite evident that they weren't going to get Brian Bonner. He doesn't want to come to the Midwest. He doesn't want to go to Penn State. He's very likely staying in Washington, or going to Washington, or staying in California. But he's also a different style back too, like you mentioned, right? DeZephan's more of a scat back. Brian Bonner's very much a receiving back, scat back type guy. And Jamal is something that we don't have right now on the roster outside of Quentin Ives. And I think, yes, we love a high-ranked 4-star like DeZephan or Brian? Absolutely, right? But Jamal is such a big physical back that I think we needed that more than your scat back, your elusive back, whatever, right? Because we have Emmett. I'm drawing blank on running back names right now. Oh,
we have Jamarian Parker.
Yeah. So you have Parker, Emmett,
Nelson,
Mackay, and then Connor Booth is your other physical back, but he's very elusive for how big he is. So I think it's a bigger need for that style of a running back.
Yeah, I agree too. And for just real quick before I go into Jamal Rule a little bit more, if you had to choose which one do you prefer, Mapuma or Obo, it depends. I think it depends, because Mapuma, you got a lot of rawness, with him, versus with Kelvin Obo, it's more of he's more of a more refined player. I think Mapuma has the ability to probably improve into a better player. I think Obo may be the most, ready to start younger earlier on in his college career. What's your take on that?
100% agree. I think a lot of Mapuma's ranking has to do with just his athletic ability. He's a basketball player, but he's converted to football where that's his primary sport. You got a guy that's 6'8", that's 300 plus pounds that can move. It's more about that stuff as opposed to the technique side of things, like you alluded to. However, I would still take Mapuma just because the upside is substantially higher, I think, than Kelvin, because Kelvin's kind of a tweener, guard or tackle, 6'5", 6'6". They're both tremendous prospects, though, right?
Yeah, and Mapuma's, I think, 6'7".
Yeah, 6'7", 6'8", big kid. Also, just for the sake of like future stuff too, is looking at from a recruiting perspective, because that's like my big focus. Is Obot is from Idaho, and you're not pumping out Power 5 players or Power 4 players consistently. Whereas Mapuma is from Chicago, which is where Troy Taylor is from, which is pumping out legit 4- and 5-star prospects left and right. So if you can continue to accumulate, that's probably the wrong word, but get guys from that area. It's the same thing with the Flobraska movement, right? You have all these players and coaches from here. It makes you feel more comfortable. It's the same thing with Chicago now too, with Trey. And if we get Claude, you have those guys that you're familiar with that are from the same area. So from a recruiting perspective, I would also prefer Mapuma.
Yeah. It's hard to say which one. I agree. I think it depends on the situation. Can you back out?
Mm-hmm.
We're at the halfway point. But yeah, for me, it's when Puma and Obo, I do think the upside from a Puma is better. If we were in a situation where we need an offensive lineman to start sooner, maybe I'd say Obo. But I think I like the potential of Mapuma. But that's a tough. I mean, that's honestly that's a tough toss-up question there, because I think Obo's got a higher floor. But let's see, Nebraska hasn't won enough or earned being on that list. You don't have to. Being on NC State's on there. It's a list of toughest places to play, not most home wins.
Michigan State's on there too.
That the argument makes no sense. I thought Connor Booth was power running. Connor Booth,
yeah, he is.
He's got a low center of gravity. He can get low power 3. Let me see where my film is for Mr. Jamal Rule though, before I forget. Oh yeah, here it is. All right, I'm going to share this with y'all a little bit. And again, his running style is pretty straightforward. But just to give you a little run through of kind of like what you're going to notice, and when these videos are playing through, is that like there's no hesitation, right? There's no getting east-west at the line of scrimmage. He's decisive as a runner. He knows where he's going to go with it, and he's going to hit that. He's going to hit that lane, and he's going to attack it, and he'll cut a little bit, but you're not going to see him in the second level. He's not going to start dancing around too terribly much. He's a plant and go guy. So you're going to see him get that foot in the ground, and while he doesn't have crazy acceleration like his top end speed, you see him pulling away from guys. Here, I don't necessarily think he's going to be pulling away from guys, at the next level. Maybe to some degree, but not to this level. But it just gives you an idea of the decisiveness and his running ability, and just kind of that more old school power running look, but no hesitation, just gets up straight up the field when you need him to. So great, in short yardage situations, etc. But you can see him, like I said here, if you take a bad angle at him, he can outrun guys. One here on the backfield, you see him lined up in the pistol a lot. But yeah, see right there, just breaks some arm tackles, just kind of keeps his feet moving, running through guys more so than running around them. But there's going to be a play that comes up here in just a second where he does run around some guys. So you see him get right there, boom, plants his foot, finds a seam, and go. So his vision's there. The one-cut backs are really good at just finding that lane, finding that open lane and hitting it, and that's going to be very good in Dana Holgerson's offense. See right here, you see him a couple shifts there, but again, as soon as he shifts, sorry, I was trying to watch the rest of that play. As soon as he makes a move, he's planting that foot and he's back upfield. Makes a move, back upfield. There's no really stopping in side to side. So he keeps that momentum rolling. Averages, I think it was either over 8 or 9 yards per carry. Again, just one more here. Again, just a little counter. And there's one play coming up where he's going to catch one, just a little right there with a stiff arm. You see the legs. You see him high stepping, kind of keeping that power, that the power generation through his legs driving through. Here's a little just a swing out pass. So he can get out there and receive if he has to, but naturally his bread and butter is going to be kind of running through you, finding those open run lanes, keeping his feet moving and breaking those arm tackles. So, yeah, a lot to like from Jamal Rule. I think, like you mentioned before, he's just a nice back that we're going to have to get in this room, because this room is going to be, seems to be what's going to be a combination, a hybrid of where you're not going to have one of those 3 down guys, every down guys. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for this guy who can come in your thunder and lightning, I guess, similar to what they were hoping Emmett and Dante Dowdle would be.
Yeah, he's a good prospect. He's a guy you're looking at probably a year or 2 away, and that's not really a knock. I mean, running backs typically can play pretty early, but just with the depth that's in that room, with how young that room is, maybe he's a guy that gets 4 games his first year in red shirts, which it wouldn't be the end of the world. Which I wouldn't worry about if he did that at all.
Any recruiting updates? Any more recruiting updates we'll run through here?
I've got crystal balls in. I put the picks in for Danny Odem and Devin Jackson on, what day was it? Friday or Saturday. So feeling good with Devin Jackson. Some things happening right now that make me a little concerned, but I still feel pretty solid about getting Devin Jackson. I have for quite a while, pretty much since his decommitment from Florida. I got a pick in right now for Larry Miles, Jr. to commit to Nebraska on July 1st. Very similar situation too, where like just coming out of his visit, there's just not a lot of news. There's no interviews, no nothing. It's very quiet, which is kind of odd, but still feel pretty good about Nebraska landing Larry Miles on July 1st. I've been saying this for months. Darian Jones seems headed to Iowa. I think that's pretty evident. I think Nebraska just was too late to the party. They did a good job making up some ground, but it's been feeling like Iowa for a long time now. I'm getting close to putting in a crystal ball pick for Claude Mapuma to commit to Nebraska. It's going to be a battle for Florida, or with Florida and with Auburn, in particular Auburn, because they're kind of desperate right now. They've been losing guys left and right. So, but I'm getting close. I was chatting with, I think it was Caleb on Twitter, back and forth, and I was like, I'm waiting for certain information to come out that's going to tell me yay or nay. So, if I had to put a percentage on him being in, it would be like 40%, 45%. Who else do we got? Nayland Scott, crystal ball. I put that crystal ball in like a week or so ago, expecting Nayland Scott to flip from Arizona State to Nebraska this week. It could be tomorrow. It could be right now for all I know. But I would expect that flip to happen this week, which would be a huge pickup for Nebraska. It's a 4-star receiver that can play inside, can play outside. He's 6'2", 6'3", 200 plus pounds, real fast, from the Southeast as well, from Georgia. Nebraska's done a great job, even before he randomly committed to Arizona State, just sticking through his recruitment, keeping on him. The tall tale sign that Nebraska was flipping him was when he was visiting Nebraska, because ASU has a strict no visit policy if you are committed. So that would basically insinuate that Danny, what's his name? Their coach down there, Danny or something like that.
Oh my gosh,
what is his name? Whatever his name is essentially going to quote unquote drop Nayland. That's supposedly what will happen.
I'm just kidding. I'm like, stop talking. I think if it's going to drive me crazy. All right. Anyways, continue.
It's driving me crazy right now. But essentially, yeah, that's what's going to happen. Is he's just going to flip. That's what will happen.
Yeah.
What else? Linebacker Calvin Thomas very likely headed to Texas. Linebacker Kason Thomas, Iowa State. I think that's pretty much it for right now. I'm trying to think who else is announcing. That's pretty much the main guys to watch for right now, though. And then Nebraska will wrap up their class. They'll have a few guys they keep tabs on over the season. Jordan Campbell, they're definitely not letting that end. I can tell you that right now. Kaysen did. Yeah, thank you, Brandon. I saw that in chat. He committed to Iowa. That's pretty much it. It's there's some misses. Linebacker is still a concern. Wide receiver, until the flips happen, until Miles hopefully commits to Nebraska. Wide receivers still a little bit of a concern. Defensive line is a gigantic red flag that is the only position I'm 100% in support of just panicking right now, because I don't think they're getting Sone, and I don't think they have any other options realistically.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, we see Kaysen committed to Iowa. Let's see.
Yeah, I think was that Friday?
I think so. Imagine if Nebraska wrestling lands Ferrari and Bo Bassett in the same offseason. Bo, hey,
that'd be insane.
There's a shot at it. Let's see. Also, thoughts on Nebraska landing Bo Bassett. I don't know if it will, just because like you're going against freaking Penn State and what was it, Oregon State or Oklahoma State? I just can't believe I said Oregon State. Oklahoma State, obviously. They're both orange and O states. But yeah,
he's also never visited.
It's hard to compete with, Cale Sanderson, of course, and try to get him. But like, the way they talked about Nebraska as an ascending, runner-up in the Big Ten last year, ascending kind of power and wrestling. You got Oklahoma State and Penn State. Penn State's been kind of, you got Bo Nickel, they're just kind of, they got that history of just wrestling, prowess, of course, we all know. Oklahoma State the same way. You had the big upset last year, but still, those are two programs that'll be hard to beat. I don't know if I necessarily put us ahead of them, unless kind of one of those things where he just wants to come over and really put a knife in the heart of Iowa fans, which would be fantastic. So, but it's hard to know. Like, it's really hard to find anything out on Husker like wrestling or wrestling recruiting anything.
It's
outside of like what's made to public, what's made to the public. So I've just been trying to keep my eyes on a lot more of that. If I can find some kind of wrestling recruiting insider, I'll find one, but it's going to be hard to find. But yeah, just kind of that would be insane for Husker wrestling, and just know here that we were one of the first channels to start covering Husker wrestling. All right, thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Another thing too, I just want to kind of go over, and then we'll get into a couple more questions here. But here are the overalls, like a few of the overalls for Nebraska College Football 2026 that somebody was able to find. Dan Key, 88. Marquez Watson Trent was 88. Sierra Wright, 87. Emmett Johnson, 86. Elijah Pritchett, 85. Marcus Buford, 84. Ja'Cory Barney, 83. Isaiah Hunter, 83. Deshaun Singleton, 83. Interesting rankings. There's some.
Ja'Cory's grossly underrated.
There's some over and under ranking there on a few names.
I thought Sierra Wright would be higher.
I did too. I thought Emmett might be higher too, but I get why, just because from the outside looking in. But Marquez Watson Trent 88 was pretty high. Being the same, him and Dan Key being 88, it's kind of both being 88. It's kind of crazy.
I'm curious what Desan McCullough's at.
That was what I was wondering, because I think if Watson Trent's an 88, McCullough needs to be a 90.
Oh yeah, no question.
At least, because that dude's going to be a game wrecker. All right, so let's see. Going to some of the comments here. Iowa linebacker and wide receiver, you can get in the portal, or if you win more games, get higher quality players. True,
yeah,
but still got to recruit it at a certain level, though.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think they'll wrap up the class with Nayland Scott and one more. Whether that's Miles Jr. or not, I don't know.
Oklahoma State, Penn State doesn't have a lot of slots left, if any, though, and he brought up faith many times in his decommitment. Yeah, I did see that. So that's an interesting point. But like, I think if we're looking at just like, I think I'm going strictly purely on like just kind of if you're from the outside looking at these programs and a wrestler, like you could either go to one of these programs that has a historic legacy, or you can go to one that's trying to make their way to the top of a conference where you have, you can go be the guy that kind of goes against the Penn State, and is kind of one of the guys that helps set that over the top. But again, like going from Iowa to Nebraska, like, can you do that and be a faithful man? Can you be a man of faith and do that? Like, or is that just such a big, like, a flip that like you can't be forgiven for that?
Bryce Sanford.
That's true.
Aaron Mullis.
I say you do it though. I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
I say you do it.
You remember our conversation a couple of weeks ago about like NIL distribution or rev share distribution, and how like we were saying maybe drop some from baseball, give to their sports or whatever. If Nebraska is able to pull off this, that's going to tell you where their rev share distribution is going, because this guy has never visited Nebraska, and if you can pull that off, oh boy,
must be
insane.
There must be see some revenue stream coming to that wrestling. Mm-hmm. Will Nebraska be a top 30 class in 2026? I would venture to guess that, well, it depends on the size, really, because if you got a 15-person class and you got people out here with 27 deep in their class, it's going to be hard to beat that. So it matters strictly on numbers. If we're talking about per recruit basis, absolutely. I think they'll be top 20.
Yeah, that's what I don't know if there's like the recruiting sites do that where they rank it like, or if you can filter it to just like a per recruit average, because that's going to be where Nebraska gets top 30.
I think you can. Yesterday I was just going and like doing it like by like looking through the rankings and kind of comparing it that way. But I think there is some way to filter it by that. But yeah, that, I mean, honestly, that's how they should have it broken up.
Yeah, especially this day and age too, because like I think it was USC's number one class in the country right now. They're at 29 commits. Okay, Nebraska is not going to have 25 between high school and maybe 25 with high school and the portal.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like Minnesota's at 11th, and they got 24 commits, and Nebraska at 8 at the time of me checking. So, class rankings, like, are one of those things that's like I'm really not going to pay attention to the class rankings until like if I do care at any point, it's going to be whenever that class is complete. Outside of that, like, I have stopped caring about like where we sit in the echelon of the recruiting rankings. I'm cared about the fit of each. I think right now, more so than any time, what we need to look at is like, how does this player fit at Nebraska? Because again, you look at teams in free agency, right? For instance, I'll make this a basketball thing just because I was breaking down the Rockets Kevin Durant trade. And here's what I said, like Kevin Durant, 37 years old, not necessarily, may not be that value to other teams. Of course, he's a big value, but like what the Rockets needed last year in the playoffs was a guy who consistently shoot and score, and they didn't have that from their top scorer. And so all he has to do is come in and be that guy who can hit shots for them down the stretch. He doesn't have to carry a team. So if a team's bringing him to carry him, they're probably not going to trade all that for him. But if a team's coming in and have him fit a role, and college football is kind of going that way a little bit more, where like, okay, you got less roster spots, to be a little bit more selective about what type of team we're going to be. Okay, here's what we have, coming through, from our recruiting classes before in this regard. Okay, now we need this guy to fit this mold. We have 2 running backs like this in our room. This guy's a good fit here. And so like that also kind of changing that style and then getting those guys that fit, into that mold is on top of their recruiting rankings. Like, do they fit? Were they like one of the top guys that we targeted in terms of that fit? And are we constantly settling for the 5th, 6th player? And I think those are the things that we need to factor in to see if recruiting is successful. There's a lot more nuance to it.
Think back to Frost, right? He took a lot of high-level players that did not culturally fit. Mm-hmm. Whereas Rule will take a combination of high-level guys, but they have to be culture fitters. You can't just bring in somebody who is used to the beaches in California and there's a completely different lifestyle, and they're a terrible fit for your culture because they can ruin it all.
Everything. Yeah.
Culture fit is more important than anything else. And that's why you see the guys that leave Nebraska, like they're asked to leave, or it's because they don't have a spot for them. And it's very few. Whereas you see a lot of schools have mass exodus year after year because they take a bunch of high-end dudes that don't fit what the program is, and nothing is bigger than the program.
Yep.
That's what I'm looking for. Culture fits.
Agreed. Yeah, and right now that's the biggest thing we talked about because Nebraska was the 4th most talented team off the bus most of those years in the Big Ten with Frost. Didn't translate. Star-wise, 4th most talented team off the bus doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what happens outside of that. When you get into college, you got to have a team that plays together, plays as a unit, and that's what made Michigan so good. 2023. All that outside noise, they play together as a unit. That's why they're so strong, no matter who's coaching. Pritchett's still a monster. Yeah, he is. Yeah. Thoughts on Crawford versus Canelo? I'm hoping Crawford by decision. I'm afraid Canelo might be too big, man. Too big and powerful. But we'll see. Crawford's put on some good size and strength from his training videos, but Crawford's going to have to be switched on the whole fight. He can't let Canelo walk him down, put him where he wants him, and because Canelo can hit, that dude can crack. So, yeah, it's going to be a damn good fight, though. It's really hard to call. It's Crawford's, IQ in his trickiness versus Canelo's just pure boxing ability and IQ and power. So I think Canelo's going to probably figure him out. Now, I don't know if Crawford's got enough power to keep him off him. So we'll see. Win totals last 15 years. Is that what that's supposed to mean? For Michigan State and NC State, I will wager are better than Nebraska. They sure didn't go through the bowl drought Nebraska did. Are we still talking about the rankings? Bro, I guarantee you that the point completely went over your head, because EA's not sitting there figuring up the records of the home records of these teams for the last 15 years to determine what's the loudest place to play. They're just going subjectively putting a bunch of teams out there. Yeah, no. There's no argument that NC State and Michigan State should be ahead of Nebraska. And my point completely went over your head because you went way too specific into it.
They've been better, but it's not about who's better.
Yes. It's about who's loudest, the hardest place to play. You always pay more in the portal. This is a business now. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Georgia's going to get another 5 or 6 in the next week or two. What, DUIs? Let's be honest here, Justin. Katie's a rocket for that package because Katie said no to Toronto and Mini. I wasn't even talking about the package. I was talking about situation-wise. I'm saying, let's say other teams didn't want him as much as the Houston for that reason. Not even diving into if this was a basketball show, I would dive into the package completely. But hopefully Netflix doesn't buffer every 2 seconds.
That was a disaster.
That was a disaster, actually. That was complete train wreck. I don't know why, they didn't expect that many people. I don't understand. You're the one selling them. You know the numbers that you're getting. Oh yeah. But yeah, the Turkey Al-Sheikh. Turkey Al-Sheikh is the guy who's the promoter for this fight for Ring magazine. So that guy's got enough money to where if this buffers, that guy's got Saudi Arabia oil money. This thing better work. That's all I'm gonna say, because he's putting a lot of money in this. Crawford got this. That would be. I hope so. I like both guys actually, so I don't really one way or the other don't care. 2, just a heads up, I will be on Generation Red right after this show concludes. So if y'all want to slide over there, if y'all have been on Generation Red or are fans of the show, I go on there. I went on there to every Tuesday at the end of last year. So I'm going to be hopping on today. First show back in a while. So y'all stay tuned for that one as well. Brian, what else is there on the docket in terms of recruiting or anything else?
Well, it's the dead period, and you're not going to see any visits allowed for the next couple months. Where it hurts Nebraska is their first game of the year is not at home. So you can't have any visitors in until who's our first home game? Akron?
No. This
Whoever
year?
It is. Yeah.
This year we're playing Cincinnati.
No, our first home game though.
Home game.
Yeah, it's technically a neutral game, so we can't have any visitors.
I thought you said our first home. I thought you said our first game. That's why I was confused. Yeah, Akron.
Yeah, so you're going basically an extra week without visitors, and I think with recruiting, you're going to see. It depends on the season, right? If this goes the way we think, you're going to be looking at October, November, an 8, 9, 10 win team, and you're going to see flips happening. If Miami has a shit year, they go 6-6 or 7-5, and Nebraska's up here at 9-3. Cristobal is going to be on the hot seat because it's Miami and it's a cluster F. Nebraska can go in and swoop out a guy like Jordan Campbell from Miami. You're going to see Nebraska be very active, flipping high-end targets. A lot of what we're seeing is just a wait and see approach with this recruiting class.
Yep.
So I think you'll see 12 or 13 commits by the start of the season, and then you'll see 2 or 3 big flips at the end.
And in your opinion, when it comes to this recruiting class, like, what do you think kind of is the trying to find the best way to word this question? I don't know. What do you think is do you think it's a more like aggressive approach, or do you think that they have their targets kind of where they want them as it currently sits?
I don't think they've been aggressive enough, to be honest with you. Getting this last weekend did pay off for them, obviously, with the commits they got plus who they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really risky play because you saw so many guys like Deacon Schmidt never come in for his visit, and he was one of your priority tackle prospects. You got dumped by Camden Jensen. You got dumped by a lot of other prospects in search of these prospects from all over the country. And I'm a big fan of your 500-mile radius.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to have your whole class be from Nebraska. I could care less if it's Nebraska kids or not, if I'm being honest here. But they went with a really broad national approach, which they'd not done before. And it was very feast or famine. And unfortunately, I think it hurt us in some places because you'd have guys that you had a really good chance at landing and you just didn't prioritize them as much because you were going after the big fish in Florida or the big fish wherever, right? So it's going to be a fine class, though, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think the class will be A-okay. And I still think, the biggest thing is the momentum for the recruiting has not gone away. Like, I think we're so far ahead of where we were that, like, we're on this snowball hill, and then, we see this little bit and then we panic, but the momentum's still here versus when it was here. And I think that's another thing that people got to realize too. And all this recruiting stuff. It's just like, as time changes, I think the responses need to change, but it's just a matter of how do we respond? I still think we're learning that. How do we respond to decommitments? What does it mean? Overall, how important is a commitment nowadays? I think we're still kind of all learning that too. So
one thing too is like this 2026 class, because we've talked about it, they reset that board in January. Essentially, you had a new GM, you got all these new coaches. It is what it is. It's not going to be a great class. It's going to be a solid class. Next year's class, though, is going to be freaking nuts. Yes. Oh, it's going to be incredible. They may take 20 kids, and it's going to be a potential top 10, top 5 class. If we win, if we just win.
Agreed. And Mike says he's not worried about recruiting, start winning more games. Yeah, if it was that simple, we would have started doing that a long time ago. You got to recruit to win as well. So you got to kind of worry about recruiting. Those two work hand in hand. It's not. I wish it was that simple. Just be like, yeah, screw recruiting. When we win, it'll happen. No, you got to recruit to win. Those two things work together. Joseph's putting in his crystal ball for Best in Nebraska. So what happened to the
Dominic Turnbull?
Yeah, it was a crystal ball, corner ball. Okay.
Yeah,
It was crystal ball. They were trying to say.
He's a corner from Florida.
No, I know, but I read it as crystal ball first. That's why I was confused.
Oh,
if you put in a crystal ball and Turnbull visiting.
I think what happened was Nebraska was very solid with where they thought they were with CJ coming out of his visit, and so they canceled Turnbull's visit, and then, of course, they landed Danny Odem. You might see Nebraska circle back to Turnbull because it was very obvious that Nebraska was his favorite. I like him a lot personally. He's not ranked as such, but he's probably better than CJ and Danny. I mean, arguably 6'3", 190 pounds. The kid's a legit track star. He had like 25 pass breakups last year. He's very, very talented. I'm not sure why they kind of fell off with him, but maybe they cycle back during the season. I love Turnbull though.
Yeah, I agree. I read crystal ball here and then automatically read crystal ball there. Yeah. Let's see. I would write a blank check for someone. If I wouldn't care if we landed another kid for 26. I mean, it would be nice to land him. Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about him a lot on the Thursday show as well. So. But all right, Well, anything else before we go to wrap up? And again, if y'all want to check me out over on the Generation Red pod, that's on YouTube as well. I'll be live 30 minutes after the hour, so y'all can slide over there. But Brian, is there anything else you got coming up planned for the week?
I got more crystal ball predictions potentially coming this weekend. So if you're not following me on X, you need to do so, because that's where I put all my crystal balls. And right now, I've only missed one this year, and that was Ryan Moret. So I'm kind of on a heater right now.
99.9% is what he's saying.
And I don't change mine last minute like Steve Wiltfong and all those fools. Like, low key, that pisses me off. It'll be like, oh, yeah, 98% accuracy rate. It's like, dude, you changed yours 5 minutes before the dude committed. I don't change mine.
Ridiculous, bro. Ridiculous. Thanks for my questions. All right, no problem. 402 Omaha. Appreciate you. All right, well, that'll do it for us here. Again, Thursday, our Husker Gutter call-in show. You can find us here live at 5 p.m. Central for that. We are here taking your calls about whatever you want to talk about. And, last time I got a complaint on Twitter. I think you saw me tell that guy. Don't complain on Twitter about, like, who calls in the show. If an Iowa person called in the show and we were talking about Iowa football and Nebraska football, don't come on Twitter complaining about how you didn't like the show. Call in and talk about something different, right? It's y'all's ability to call in and talk about whatever you want, okay? So don't come on Twitter complaining to me about the calls when it was football related the whole time. It's not my problem. So
before we get out, special guest on the Husker Gutter call-in show this week.
Oh yeah, Thursday. Special guest coming on the Husker Gutter call-in show. Go ahead and drop that.
We have the newest Husker commit, Jamal Rule, calling into the show. We don't know when it's going to be. He's just going to call in.
He will be calling.
That's our guest.
Yep. And so y'all stay tuned for that. So yeah, Husker Gutter call-in show Thursday. Jamal Rule will be calling in, and y'all could listen to him, ask your questions in the chat, do whatever you want. Just don't complain. Unless it's a legitimate reason, then you can complain. But so y'all stay tuned for that. Get everything ready. Get your popcorn ready for that show. Get ready for Brian's recruiting updates. Crystal Balls. Follow him over on X. I'll drop that here at the bottom. There. At KC Husker 24. You can find me at _H-Town Husker. I'm usually causing up some stirring up the pot in some way. But with that being said, guys, thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't left a like, go ahead and drop one. I appreciate. Which show are you going to next? It's going to be the Generation Red podcast. So Generation Red on YouTube. So go ahead and slide over there if you want to check it out. But that being said, Brian, thank you again. Brian got off work, got in here at the last second, still made the show happen on time. So I appreciate Brian as usual. And thank you everybody again who liked the stream, commented, drop your questions, and we will see you on Thursday. Peace.